Tanya Johor Takzim, pembuat sejarah, they have finally broken the round of 16 ceiling in Asia's highest level of club competition and make history for the first time as they advance into the quarterfinals of the AFC Champions League Elite despite suffering a late 0-1 reverse in the second leg at the Sultan Ibrahim Stadium earlier tonight. And even though the performance itself overall was not eye pleasing, but in the end, it was the result that really mattered in the end. Keputusan penting pada akhirnya, and by reaching the suku akhir of the AFC Champions League Elite, they now join fellow Southeast Asian rivals Buriram United and two other Japanese teams, Vissel Kobe and Machida Zelvia, into the last eight of the competition, where pending the rescheduling of the West Zone round of 16 matches, they are set to face off against some of the best clubs in the West Asia side, potentially facing up against the likes of Karim Benzema or and a few other big names from the Saudi League, pending again on whether the current Middle East conflict is able to subside for the matches to resume and for the quarterfinals, semi-finals and final of this edition of the ACLE to be played once again for the second of 5 years in Saudi Arabia. And by reaching this milestone, Johor have now shown that after years of trying to break into the top tier of clubs in Asia, the wider Asia, they have finally done it. Again, as I said just moments ago, not the best performance, but Cisco Munoz set out the team in how he wanted to do. And even though he was already dealt with the blow where earlier last week, the Court of Arbitration of Sports have ruled that 3 of the 7 players who are involved in the documentation forgery scandal, where they upheld the punishment that was passed down by FIFA, which meant John Irazabal, Hector Havel, and more crucially João Figueiredo, who featured in the first leg of this tie in Sultan Ibrahim Stadium last week, all 3 had to resume the remainder of their suspension, which commenced from the 5th of March until, as I said in the last video regarding the CAS decision, the 6th of November this year, where they will finally be able to resume playing competitive matches for their clubs again. But for now, Figueiredo's contributions in this ACLE is done, having done the job, providing the support, positioning himself, almost getting back to his best as a centre forward. The upholding of this ruling robbed JDT of one striker who could make a difference, even when he took a couple of months to regain that mojo that made him such a lethal figure and struck up such a solid partnership with Bergson in the first few months of this season before FIFA imposed the sanctions on the players. So, heading into this game, none of the trio travelled. Crucially, Nacho Mendes did start, even though there were rumours of him being the potential 8th player had he featured in last year's Asian Cup qualifiers, but Nacho Mendes started and Jonathan Silva returned to the starting 11 as the former Watford manager chose to put defence first in his mission, where he wanted to keep that 2-goal advantage that they toyed so hard with an outstanding performance last week. And you can say that they allowed Sanfrecce a lot of the possession, but Johor was smart enough to position their players in defensively in such a way that Sanfrecce were often left frustrated. It's not the classic case of parking the bus, but it is not a case of where the Johor decided to try to extend the 2-goal advantage either. And the Edion Peace Wing Stadium, or better known officially as the Hiroshima Soccer Stadium. What the Southern Tigers did tonight was simply try to preserve the lead, if possible, go on a quick counter, and this meant that without the central presence of Figueiredo, it meant that Gyro had to play up front with Marcos Guilherme floating in from the wing, and I think with the focus more on the defense side, it became more effectively like a 5-4-1 with Gyro often isolated up front. Although the slightly more curious case was having Afiq Faisal in the first 45 minutes starting as the captain of the side alongside Nacho Mendes, and with Nene playing a, a, a peripheral role in the middle of the park. It is not beautiful football. Let us be upfront here. Johor did not play well. Johor did not play outstanding, but they knew what they needed to do to get the result to go through the quarterfinals. This is not about showing off when you need the result. This is about delivering the result, whatever the performance is. And this is the part Cisco and his coaching staff did wonderfully to ensure that the Malaysian champions reach a new milestone in Asia's highest level of elite club competition. And this is very important because for many years, ever since Tunku Ismail Ibrahim, the region of Johor, took over Johor Darul Takzim in 2013, his medium term to longer term vision was more about reaching among the best clubs in Asia, not Southeast Asia, Asia, to be up there fighting with the traditional giants of Asian club football, whether it was the Al Hilals or the Al Ittihads of Saudi Arabia, or whether it is with the Korean clubs previously, or even the Japanese clubs in recent years, ever since the J1 clubs decided to take this competition very seriously with the greater financial incentive and with their players more than good enough to hold on their own. And that's evident. And you can see why JDT assembled the players they had. It's more about using the brain. It's more about using the know-how to control the game, not by possession, but by frustrating Sanfrecce. It made the game bad, yes. It made the game stale, yes. It made the game not so enticing, yes. But they knew what they needed to do to deliver for this match, the Johor Darul Takzim match. And that was the one thing those 11 players and the 3 substitutes that came on knew what they had to do. Even though they considered the late penalty through a handball from Nene, but it was just about enough. JDT crossed over the finishing line at the final whistle, 3-2 on the aggregate. Overall, you can say that this is supposed to be a milestone that should be celebrated in Malaysian football. And it rightfully still ought to be. Although the criticism will come where tonight only one local born out of the team of 11 from Johor Darul Takzim started the game in Hiroshima, while Sanfrecce Hiroshima themselves had 100% all local lineup. I think you can see that this is why JDT signed those players, is to satisfy their desire to compete at a different level than what they were previously used to under the previous import restrictions. But nonetheless, this is all about what Johor needed to do and what Johor wanted to do. They came to Hiroshima for the second time this season, this time to hold on, get the aggregate win, and they did it. Now, looking beyond the point where we'll expect Johor to be paired with a West Asian giant in the quarterfinals, the crucial question right now is, where does Johor go from there? Because It's quite clear that uh, in this competition in particular, this is the one competition that Johor has been very focused on in recent seasons. And as I said in one or two previous videos, winning the Malaysian Super League, winning the Piala FA Malaysia, winning the Piala Subansing, winning the Piala Malaysia, they are no longer enough for a club of this magnitude like Johor Darul Takzim. For them, Asia is now the goal. Asia is the key. And ultimately, what Johor had is a manager who knew how to get these players over the line. Although it took them quite a bit of adjustments, and I have been critical of Cisco Munoz before. I would say yes, you want beautiful football, but sometimes as the underdog nation, where Malaysia is not among the giants in Asian football, whether it's club or country, to have Johor flying the flag for the first time in the quarterfinals is something that should still be recognized for what they have been aiming for all these years. Now, what next? It's obvious that these players that were signed, especially in the last few years, the goal was to elevate Johor to this level, to show that they can at least match up with the majority of the Asian club sides, whether it's the East Zone or the West Zone, to show that they have the smarts, they have the know-how, they can handle the individual game situations, and they have the mentality which has been ingrained from their years playing in Europe or South America, and to translate that as a collection of players to play for the batch and to deliver when it really mattered. I know it's a bit condescending to say this for the rest of Malaysian club football, where at times against certain opponents, Johor could sleepwalk their way through wins. But in this level, sleepwalking is not an option. The only option is to play and do whatever it was necessary to win. And they did just that. And that away loss, for the second away loss in Hiroshima after the 1-2 league stage loss earlier this year, a couple of months back, it showed that there's still something that Johor still needs to overcome, especially when they play away. Playing away, notably, has not been Johor's strongest suits. And they knew that their biggest pillars behind their historic achievement in the AFC Champions League Elite lies in excelling in their home Sultan Ibrahim Stadium, where they have made it an Asian fortress in the last few seasons, even before the pandemic. So, by making this stadium their fortress, it makes Johor this formidable, and it makes this stadium one of the hardest stadiums to play for visiting teams. Whether it is your J1 clubs or the K-League clubs or even the Chinese Super League clubs, they know that the humidity and the location and also the high attendances for these games puts them at a massive disadvantage. Now, the next step for Cisco Munoz and his coaching staff is, with the quarterfinals set to be played in a centralized location in Saudi Arabia, what is he going to do? How is he going to plot his tactics now that Figueiredo is unavailable for the rest of the season? Never mind Hector Havel and John Irazabal. This is very crucial because when you don't have these three players who have been actually quite central in the first couple of months of the season before the enforced ban, it does force the Spanish majority coaching staff to rejig their tactical plans, and you can see how they struggle in those months after the enforced suspension. They even nearly threw away 3 points in Cambodia in the Shopee Cup. The away travel will not be in Johor's greatest advantage. On the contrary, they will have to learn how to be better playing away from the Sultan Ibrahim Stadium in Asia or Southeast Asia, because they need to do a job. Now we know that Johor can deliver a professional job when it really mattered. They will deliver the result. Now, in the next stage where it's only one time, not two legs, just one single leg, one knockout, one chance, where it's either they go through or they go home early. This is where the greater puzzle in Asia lies ahead for Johor Darul Takzim. It has been quite a fascinating run this season, with Cisco managing where all other Johor Darul Takzim managers of the past, whether it was the AFC Cup winning head coach Mario Gomez, whether it was Hector Bidoglio, whether it was other coaches along the way, where they all failed, he finally succeeded. That is to go to the next round, to be among the best 8 clubs in Asia this season, perhaps with one eye of perhaps accumulating enough points to potentially, as far even though it's a long shot, the Club World Cup in Morocco in 2029. And who knows, if JDT keeps playing on this particular level, they will be certain of at least be the outsider on the outside chance of actually qualifying for the Club World Cup based on the points they accumulate. But still, nonetheless, the harder tests await. And these harder tests involve how to get those players who can compete, because it's quite clear Johor have a big squad, but it doesn't mean that all 30 over players in Johor can play in this particular ACLE level. And this is particularly damning, especially with the few local born players entrusted. Arif Aiman is still some way to full fitness. Afiq Faisal has been used quite sparingly so far of late, and it's quite clear in the ACLE it's always the foreigners who get the places in the starting 11, particularly Marcos Guilherme, who has shown ever since joining in January. But one or two others, there's still something to be desired. With Bergson showing that he's better off as an impact substitute in this level, is Gyro still the right fit as a centre forward, or do they need to create a false 9? And how about Nacho Insa? Can he really last the pace in ACLE in spite of his experience? That is another major question mark. And there's always the never-ending struggle, puzzle between Adoni Zubair, who has actually been outstanding for Johor in the ASEAN Club Championship and now in the ACLE this season, and also Shihan Hazmi, who has shown to be no slouch when he was called upon, particularly in the game against Machida Selvia at home this season. They know what is at stake. So you can say you can count with at least one hand how many Malaysian local born players will be able to contribute. Arif Aiman if fit, Afiq Faisal, Shihan Hazmi, and to an extent, Nazmi Faiz, to a limited extent. And if there are one or two more players I left out, I apologize, but yes, there are only these few local born players that Johor can rely on. That means the foreigners will take the bulk of the responsibility. And by instantly elevating it to a level that is comparable to a Europa League side, I think Johor has pushed into new territory. But as we know, the ambitions of Johor already go beyond Malaysia, already go beyond perhaps the round 16. So it's the harder test that really comes ahead. Samfreche has given them a glimpse of the problems that could come, because Johor cannot be defending so much for so long in 90 minutes. Ultimately, something has to give. Ultimately, Johor still has to find a way, without Figueiredo, on how to score goals in the ACLE, and hoping that Gyro will be able to be the force instead of being a mere physical presence to trouble defenses, because there'll be few second chances, and you need the likes of Oscar Arbas to shine on the wings on the flanks as wingbacks. Oscar Arbas, he nearly scored. He hit the post with Osako completely beaten. Those limited chances that Johor have, they will have to take. Or even if they have to put Gyro for 60 over minutes before Bergson comes on as an impact substitute, I think those tactical arrangements that Cisco Munoz and his team have to face is going to be far greater from now on. And every Malaysian club game, whether it's in the league or the cup, is going to be warm up for the bigger test ahead in Saudi Arabia, however disparate the level of the opponents is. And that begins with this Sunday's trip for Johor Darul Takzim to Brunei, where they face DPMM FC. But at the meantime, Tanya Johor Darul Takzim for reaching a new milestone in Asia, and the Brunei fans can expect to face one of the best 8 clubs in Asia, whatever the lineup Cisco Munoz may choose to do at the Sultan Haslau Bolkiah National Stadium. Yeah. Good evening.